Hello and welcome to our Employer Masterclass session from the Change in Education Group. This is an opportunity for employers to give you, the students, a real insight into the world of work. My name is Masterclass, your host and careers advisor here at the Change in Education Group. Joining me today is Noor Chaudhary, who is a final year student at the University of Aberdeen and studied an integrated master's in biomedical science. Pharmacology, in other words. Noor had a year in industry at Pfizer as a regulatory strategist. Beside that, she's gained work experience in a lab at the University of Aberdeen. Noor, congratulations to you. It sounds like it's been a busy year.
Yeah, it has. It has. With everything being online because of COVID as well, it's definitely been different and hectic.
So you've completed your degree now. Congratulations. How does that feel?
It feels good. I was very nervous because I didn't know, after all these years, because this is kind of what it all ends up to be, whatever classification you get, what grades you get. But I've got a first class honours, so it's made me very happy.
Wow.
Hard work's paid off. So
Yeah, congratulations. And so tell me, what's the plans? What do you plan to do beyond this degree now?
So, as you mentioned, I did a degree in biomedical science, but I focused mainly on pharmacology because that's kind of where my interest lies. And I did have industry experience with Pfizer, which is a pharmaceutical company. So, the pharma industry is where I kind of see myself in the future, but I haven't kind of limited myself to that. So, I'm currently looking at other biopharmaceuticals companies or, startups as well.
Yeah, I think we will all be very familiar with Pfizer, especially with all that's been going on with the pandemic. Tell us what that experience was like working with such a huge pharmaceutical company like Pfizer.
Yeah, so I went in as an undergraduate regulatory strategist. So it wasn't directly kind of correlated with my degree program. I was, it involves a lot of paperwork, looking at guidelines and policies, which is not kind of what I was, prepared to be doing. But what it did give me was a very overlook over how the company functions, because I was working as a regulatory strategist. You're in charge of one medicinal product and you kind of see all the way through any complications that comes through, any shortages, you kind of in charge of it. So I was working with, medical teams, I was working with safety, I was working with clinicians, which are probably roles that I would go into after my degree. So I was working with careers that I would potentially be in the future, but not actually in it. It was very nice to kind of see what could be expected from me if I was in that field. So if I was in safety, or if I was in clinical team, or if I was in the pharmacokinetic team, what would be expected from me, and what others would like, or how they would like me to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on, continue.
Yes, and this was my first time working in an office as well, from 9 to 5. So it was very nice to have that experience beforehand, before I graduated. It just kind of calms your nerves, I guess, because you don't know what you're going into after graduation.
Yeah, and I think having that bird's eye view and seeing everything and knowing specifically which area you're interested in working in, but again, getting the experience of doing everything gives you an insight into, what you could do post studies. And of course, experience is the best thing. And that's the one thing students always argue is that, we don't get that same experience, but you managed to put yourself in that position. Can you tell us when this took place and tell us the process and how you got there?
So my degree program itself, because it's an integrated master's, you have a year in industry. So it was something that I was expected to apply for during my third year. So I was applying to, I knew I wanted to go into pharmaceutical companies. So I was applying to a couple different ones during that time. And I was lucky enough to get into Pfizer. So initially they asked for an application. which you send through. And usually with pharmaceutical companies, the deadlines for their application is quite early on in the year. So it's something that you kind of need to have decided upon beforehand. So it's not something, looking at applications around January, it's usually around October time. So it's something you worked on over the summer in your own time. So you sent out an application, and then you do, often with these companies, you do a kind of test online where it's mostly competency-based questions. So they're kind of just looking at if you are the right candidate for them, really. And then usually followed by a video interview these days as well, which is kind of you just talking to a screen and just answering a couple of questions, and then is followed by a formal interview or a group assessment day. So I applied with GSK as well. Both of them I was able to get into the formal interview stage. So, but the process was pretty much the same for them all. They all have, initial application, which is your CV or a cover letter, then a test, and then just a video, like a interview. So usually done through HireVue. I think that's what most of them use. So then the formal interviews, usually you have your group assessment, and that is kind of where it's the make or break. That's really when it's the time for you as well to kind of know if this is the right place for you. Beforehand, it's more them judging you, but at that time you actually have, the time to even ask questions and see for yourself if this is what you want.
Yeah. Well, and when did this take place? Was this last year or was it a bit earlier?
Yeah. So this was during my third year. So, Aberdeen, there's 5 years. So third year you apply, and then fourth year is your placement year, and then you come back for fifth year, which was this year that's just passed for me, and then you graduate. So that's how my degree program was organized.
Well, in a way, I suppose you got to see it, pre-pandemic, so it was a bit calmer. I can imagine for students who would have had to do it last year and this year, it's panic stations.
Definitely. For me, during the application phase and stuff, it was all normal. Even the first half of my placement was, how they've been running the placements year on year. The second half is when the pandemic really hit, so around March time. So the placement lasted until August, but in March is when lockdown happened. And we were all kind of told to go home, we're not working from the office anymore. I had relocated for this placement as well, because they were based down in Kent, so I didn't live down there. I was based up in Scotland at that time, so I had to move up again, and it was very difficult to navigate during that time because there was just so much uncertainty in the world in general. But I know I helped them during that time as well with the new applications coming in. So I know that when the pandemic happened and lockdown happened, that's usually the time when, as a company, you are organizing placements, because in the coming, just after summer, people are going to be sending the applications in. So a lot of talk in the beginning was just going on if they're going to be even carrying out the placements, if they are going to run it, how are they going to run it? Because most likely we will still be in lockdown at that time.
Yeah.
But Pfizer as a company, they did run the placement program. It was just done online. So students who were part of the placement just the year that's passed, I don't think they have spent a day in the office. They've been home-based, which is also, I think, as an experience they've had that not many people would have had.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely. I think it's difficult. It's hard for them because obviously, for ethical reasons as well, they don't want to bring students in an environment where they're working with a potential virus at the time where nobody knew exactly, what it meant. And obviously, it's incredible that vaccines have been found very quickly. But I can imagine they were working on some of these things for quite some time, and they just had the right pieces to put together to get the rollout for these vaccines quickly. I know obviously there's only so much you can say, but were you privy to some things? Were you able to see some things that opened your eyes and thought, wow, this is incredible?
Definitely in the beginning, I would say the first half of the placement, I was just trying to get my head around how things worked. As I mentioned, it was a role that I had no knowledge of beforehand. Um, so just knowing what the European Medicines Agency is or what the HMRA is, do you know what I mean? Like just
Yeah,
knowing what these terms meant and who are like now I feel like people just because of the vaccine and the pandemic, people just know a lot more.
yeah,
They know
yeah. As
who's
soon
who,
as you mentioned those, I thought, oh, those lot again.
yeah, like who is approving these medicines and
Yeah,
how everything works. But
yeah.
I didn't have any knowledge. I didn't even know that there is like so much regulations just around the packaging and how there's patient information leaflets in each medicines, like how the work that goes behind it. So there's a lot of like just catching up to do in the first half. Second half, I had a lot more because I knew my work a lot better. I was able to kind of explore a lot more. So I did a couple of just week-long placements, just kind of shadowing a lot of other people, different teams like pharmacokinetic teams and stuff, just seeing what they were doing. I worked with a lot of like different groups in the company as well. So starting up like mentoring program within the company and just kind of exploring and adventuring a little bit more, seeing what other things you can do, especially when you're working with a big company. There is just so much going on that you can get involved with. um, Unfortunately, I wasn't lucky enough to work with the actual vaccine program itself, but I had, other colleagues who were on placement with me. They were actually involved with that program, and working with people and how that was going to be rolled out, everything. So that was quite interesting as well.
Well, I'm sure the opportunity will come for you, and now that you've graduated as well, they'll be running after you and wanting to take you as part of their team. So tell us what you'd like to do in the near future. What's the goal?
The goal right now is to, start somewhere, basically. I've had like I've had obviously experience in industry. I had some experience, as you mentioned as well, working in like academic environment as a research scientist. So I kind of in the future, my ideal work environment would be where I'm working both in research and in industry. Um, and it is possible. So, but it's going to take some time to get to that stage. And um, I would like to stay within obviously the biomedical science or just medical sciences in general. That's where my interests lie. Currently, I'm just looking at getting some more experience in industry.
Excellent. Now, there's students watching this who'd love to be in your position, and you're a few years ahead of them. What advice would you offer to those students that want to do what you're doing?
So is this for students
Oh,
in high school or
yeah, high
college?
school and college. Sorry.
Yeah, so I would say if you kind of have decided that STEM is kind of the area you want to go to, and especially like medical sciences and just this field in general, um, the earlier you start, the better. So when I say that is just knowing, maybe researching into companies, seeing there's a lot of companies that do, week-long work experiences. You can, contact someone through email and ask for some shadowing experience. So the more you know beforehand, the more beneficial it is to you later on, and in industry, one of the biggest like learning points I've learned is that networking is key. So the more you network, the more networks you have, the easier it will be for you just getting the right, I would say, job or just the right kind of role for you. Because a lot of people do spend, I would say, time in a role that they don't really enjoy, but they just need to start somewhere. So if you already have done your background knowledge beforehand and you know exactly what you like, then you don't waste that time, just experimenting because you've already done that beforehand. I don't know if that makes sense, but
No, that's absolutely perfect sense. You've given some really good advice there. I almost feel guilty asking the next question because that advice was just so good. We're already coming towards the end of the interview. What final words would you like to leave our audience with?
I would say definitely go out and just adventure and just see what is out there. Like before started to do any kind of stuff with STEM, I was working with a youth group. I worked with the youth parliament. Like I was just doing anything that I saw, extracurricular that I could kind of get involved in. And I did the Duke of Edinburgh award, and I think that for me that was where it all kind of kick-started. And I know that starts at your GCSE level, and what that pushes you to do is just kind of go out there and try different things. And from there, I kind of got kicked off into doing a lot of extracurricular work. So I think even though like now I'm not in politics, so looking back, I'm like, what did I learn from my time at the youth parliament? But it's just that these skills that you learn, and it's just networks that you build, and they do end up helping you in the future. So don't be afraid to only be very like focused on one thing, like, oh, I'm going to do chemistry. I'm only going to do things related to chemistry. Like explore and just do whatever you get the opportunity to do, and you will enjoy. Don't do anything you won't enjoy either, just for the sake of it.
Wow. I couldn't add anything more to that. No, it's been an absolute joy just hearing your story and your experiences. And, thank you so much for taking the time to share your story with us. And, we know you've got a bright future ahead. And we're just glad that you've come to grace us with your story and your experiences. So again, thank you so much. We wish you all the very best in what you do in the future. Thank you.